Even with my almost 18 years of law enforcement, I've seen a lot of things, and I was not prepared for that.
Moscow's current police chief is talking about his role in the murder investigation on King Road, the mysteries that remain despite Bryan Kohberger's guilty plea and Kohberger's odd behavior after the murders.
He was seen wearing gloves, doing things like going out to the grocery store.
Plus, we're learning new details about the investigation from hundreds of pages of Moscow police reports, including what that DoorDash driver said she saw. Welcome to Crime Fix. I'm Angenette Levy. Current Moscow Police Chief Anthony Dahlinger, he's been a cop for a very long time, but all of that training and experience in the world couldn't have prepared him for the horror of November 13th, 2022. That day, of course, forever changed the lives of 4 families who lost their children, their siblings, their nieces, and their nephews. It's the day that Maddie Mogen, Kaylee Goncalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin were found stabbed to death in the house at 1122 King Road. That crime was so senseless, the victims could not have been more innocent. The murders also changed the small city of Moscow, Idaho. That college town is the home of the University of Idaho, and it definitely changed the city's small police department. I spoke with Chief Dahlinger about the case, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. But first, I want to go through some of what we're learning from the police reports that the Moscow Police Department released hours after Bryan Kohberger was sentenced to 4 consecutive life sentences for the murders. There are hundreds of pages of records. Kohberger is now just a number at Idaho's maximum security institution. He's inmate 163214. He's admitted to sneaking into the house at 1122 King Road just after 4 a.m. that morning and creeping up to Maddie Mogen's 3rd floor bedroom and stabbing Maddie and Kaylee. Then Kohberger stabbed Xana Kernodle and Ethan Chapin in Xana's bedroom. Ethan was asleep in the bed. Xana fought for her life. An officer described it as an intense struggle. But the intense fight didn't stop Kohberger from taking the life of Ethan Chapin, who was asleep in Xana's bed. Xana had just received a DoorDash order minutes before Kohberger walked into the house through the sliding glass door. That DoorDash driver spoke to police 10 days after the murders, but a body camera video of her from a September 2024 DUI stop caused a stir when she told police she saw Bryan and that he parked right next to her. But that's not what she told police in 2022. The driver told police 10 days after the murders that she had trouble finding the house that night. The driver told police she saw a brunette woman popping up and down in the 3rd floor window, but couldn't identify her. She told police she saw a man in a tan sedan who looked zoned out drive past her wearing a collared shirt, but police believe that that person actually drove an SUV and left the area. Police wrote, during the time that M was in the area of the King Road residence, the white Elantra can be seen via the King Road camera driving back and forth on Walenta Drive and then enter the King Road Queen Road loop at approximately 3:56 hours. At the point that M pulled into the front parking lot before she dropped the order off, the white Elantra pulled in behind M's vehicle, a gray Subaru Forester, and then exited the King Road at approximately 3:58 hours. M did not mention seeing the white Elantra behind her at any time. Corporal Payne said in his report that it did not appear that the DoorDash driver saw the white Elantra during her time near the house. The driver dropped off the food at 4 a.m. at the front door and left. Surviving roommate Dylan Mortensen told police she thought she heard Kaylee scream at 4 a.m. and called out for her. She also thought that she heard Kaylee dancing with her dog Murphy and say, "Somebody is here," and then run down the stairs. Dylan also said she heard someone crying from a bathroom, and she heard noises, and then she opened her door and saw the man in all black with bushy eyebrows holding a container as he walked past her. And she said the man saw her. The 911 call was placed nearly 8 hours later. Now, while police say Kohberger went to the 3rd floor first, Chief Dahlinger told me they don't know which room that Kohberger went into first, Kaylee's or Maddie's. So which woman was possibly the target? They can't and won't say, since Kohberger used software to wipe his devices and they've found no connection between him and the victims. But Kohberger ended up in Maddie's room where he found 2 women, not just one. Chief Dahlinger said at some point, whether it was in the living room or on the stairs, Kohberger encountered Xana, who likely ran to her room where that tremendous struggle with Kohberger took place. The family of Kaylee Goncalves has been reading through the police reports and posted on Facebook. We are slowly trying to process what we have been reading. Please understand we are all reading them at the same time as everyone else. Do you think this was a fair way to find out the absolute brutality that Kaylee had endured? This was part of what we had been fighting for years. Tell us what happened to Kaylee. We deserve to know before the rest of the world. The family later posted, I just want to sleep. It's too painful to be awake. Hashtag Kaylee Jade forever. This is another Law and Crime legal alert. If you received Depo-Provera birth control shots and were later diagnosed with a brain or spinal tumor called meningioma, you may be eligible to take part in a lawsuit. Morgan & Morgan is investigating claims that patients were not properly warned about this risk. It's free to check, just takes a few minutes, and you don't pay unless they win. So scan that QR code that you see on your screen, click the link below, or go to forthepeople.com/LCDepo to see if you qualify. I want to bring in Chief Anthony Dahlinger. He is the head of the Moscow Police Department, but at the time that these homicides happened, he was a captain in the PD. Chief Dahlinger, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. It's been a few days now, so how are you feeling now that this sentencing has concluded and Bryan Kohberger is now serving those 4 consecutive life sentences in the Idaho State Department of Corrections?
Yeah, honestly, it's still a bit surreal. I don't think it's really hit home with me personally yet that it's over. I mean, this case has been an integral part of our agency in my life, basically daily since 2022. So I think it's going to take some time for that to set in and really have reality hit me in the face and say, "Oh no, this is over."
Yeah. Were you surprised when he changed his plea, when you got word that he was interested in pleading guilty?
You know, these things, I know these court cases are dynamic. In this one in particular, in the back of my mind, I always thought, well, maybe this is a possibility, and it always was. So I guess I wasn't surprised, but it's just one of those things that I wasn't quite thinking that would occur, but it did. And I was, I wouldn't say I wasn't taken aback by it, but kind of glad to hear it, honestly.
During that sentencing hearing and even the plea hearing, you're sitting there and you're watching this unfold. You're watching him, I assume, in some respects, but also, I mean, you're there representing the investigation and in some respects, the victims. I mean, this was a heinous crime. I mean, the public is now getting a look at the details from actual reports, but you have seen the photos. You actually know how horrific this was. So sitting there and looking at him during that sentencing hearing, what was going through your mind?
You know, especially during the sentencing, my mind and my heart was with the families. It's absolutely unimaginable what they have gone through and will continue to go through, because this isn't over for them. It never will be. I cannot imagine losing someone, especially a child, and especially in that manner. I can't fathom it. So that's all I could think about. Was I was a bit joyful that it was coming to a close and that we were able to accomplish the mission and hold accountable the person who did this terrible, terrible crime. But my heart was out with the family members. And certainly if you watch that sentencing, you can understand the high level of emotion, rightly so, and the vast array of emotions that were shared. I felt a lot of that personally.
I want to go back now to November of 2022. Where were you when you got the call that there were 4 kids murdered in a house off campus?
I was actually at my home. It was a Sunday. I was one of my days off, and I was watching a bit of television on my couch, waiting. I had about an hour, I think, until I was due at a friend of mine's birthday celebration. And my phone rang, and I knew typically when I get a phone call on a day off like that, it's usually something not good, or it could just even be a question from one of the officers that needs something. And so when I picked up the phone, I certainly didn't expect to hear the news that we had not only a homicide but a quadruple homicide. And my initial reaction was, quite honestly, disbelief. I thought, well, you got to be kidding me, right? I mean, not only are homicides in Moscow very rare, but the idea that we had a quadruple homicide, my brain just didn't comprehend it initially. But the folks on the other side of the line said, well, it's a thing. So get your stuff on and get into work. And that's just what I did. And that started off the next 7.5+ weeks of our lives.
Did you go directly to the house on King Road?
I did.
Okay. Did you go inside or did you stay on the outside?
I didn't go in initially. We had a lot to do on the outside. We had our initial responding officers helping to lock down the scene, as they should, and they did a great job of cordoning off the area. We had multiple people that were around that area, college-age folks that we needed to identify, we needed to talk to, we needed to start that investigation and start finding out, okay, where do we go from here? So no, initially I did not go in the house.
Did you eventually go in the house?
Yes, I did.
When was that?
I can't recall if it was the next day or a couple days after that. The first days were a bit of a blur. We were working tirelessly from dawn till late at night. And but yes, I did eventually go in there on more than one occasion.
Were you prepared for what you saw?
No, not at all. I don't think anybody can prepare for that. Even with my almost 18 years of law enforcement, I've seen a lot of things, and I was not prepared for that.
What is described in these police reports is beyond comprehension. So imagine what it was like to see it up close. There was a lot of blood in Maddie and Xana's bedrooms. The 4 college students who'd enjoyed a night out after the big football game the day before were dead. One officer said in his report that Kaylee was unrecognizable because of what had been done to her. Xana Kernodle was found in her second-floor bedroom, laying on her back, wearing a sweatshirt and underwear. She was ready for bed and had more than 50 stab wounds. Many were defensive wounds on her hands and arms. Ethan had been killed in his sleep. He was in Xana's bed and had wounds on his legs. What were your primary duties? At that time, you were a captain, so you're part of the command staff of the police department. So what were your roles and duties in the investigation?
Yeah, I was the services division commander. So part of my area of supervision was actually our investigation unit, I should say. And so I was trying my best to help the investigators get all of the resources and personnel that they needed in a timely manner so that we could continue this investigation. And that I think is going to be one of the biggest highlights of this case is the level of collaboration we had with our state, federal, other state agencies across the country. I mean, the level of collaboration on this was absolutely immense, and it was something to behold.
I mean, let's talk about that. I mean, because a lot of times, and I'm sorry I interrupted you there, but a lot of times egos can get involved, and agencies, want to come in and Bigfoot something. You had Idaho State Police involved in this. You had the FBI, later Pennsylvania State Police. So talk to me about that, because obviously Moscow, you guys are 25,000 people live there, a little more than 25,000 people. You guys are a small PD. I mean, this is not a big city PD with a big homicide unit. So you needed some help and you knew it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And my predecessor, Chief Fry, did a phenomenal job of casting that net of resources wide and quickly after this kicked off. And so, yeah, and back to what your comment about sometimes other agencies get involved, there could be egos. There was absolutely none of that. Absolutely none. Not one day did we see anybody have any kind of any other attitude than we are a team, we are focused on the mission, and we are going to do everything we can to get this mission completed. And it was completely succinct and amazing, honestly, to behold.
Mhm. You walk into that house. I don't know exactly where you went. I mean, did you see the knife sheath that day?
I don't recall if I saw it that day.
But I mean, that was something that had to have stood out as you guys are thinking, that's a major piece of evidence. And it really is one of the things, if not the major thing, that broke this case wide open for you guys.
Yeah, certainly. It was an integral part. And we had our initial, Corporal Payne, when he did his first initial walkthrough of the residence, saw the sheath and recognized it immediately as something that we needed to take a look at and start processing. And then when the Idaho State Police came in, they processed the scene. That sheath was immediately turned over, literally driven straight down to the Idaho State Police lab, forensics lab in Meridian, and handed directly to the specialists down there to begin work on it. And they started working on it immediately.
Mm-hmm. When the results come back and they're like, hey, it's single source male DNA and it's not coming up in CODIS, was the Idaho State Police Crime Lab, was the DNA, head there? Were they the ones that said, maybe we should try genetic genealogy, or how did that come about?
I mean, all this stuff was team effort. I know that the Idaho State Police has a contract with Othram, and they were a wonderful partner in helping us with that. And then the decision to, once we had that profile created, pulled from that DNA sample, then the decision was made to involve our partners again in the FBI because of the level of resources that they had. And my understanding is that it's absolutely, we would have gotten the same result through Othram as well. And it could have been in the same time frame. But of course, when we were in the middle of an investigation like that, we were trying to get these leads and these ideas and these evidence figured out as quickly as possible. And so that's why it was handed off to the FBI to use their resources. And then we got our result relatively quickly after that.
Mm-hmm. When they call you guys on December 19th and they say, you need to look at this guy, this Bryan Kohberger, kind of what goes through your mind?
It had been so long, and we had so many people that we had looked at, literally hundreds and hundreds of interviews. And we had so many individuals brought up that, oh, maybe it's this person. And we very quickly ruled them out. And then the next day, maybe it's this person, quickly rule them out. So to get that return, to get that name was just fantastic. I mean, we had something now to really, we were digging our teeth into everything, I should say that, but we really dug into that immediately. And that's when all of the puzzle pieces started coming together. Everything started to click into place, and that picture of who he was and his involvement, and that he was the person we were looking for, became pretty clear pretty quickly.
The surviving roommate, one of the surviving roommates, Dylan Mortensen, she had described the guy, the build. I mean, a pretty good description for somebody who is saying how intoxicated she was and she was sleepy, tired, all of this stuff, but talked about the bushy eyebrows. And so, I mean, when you guys pull up the picture and you see this guy, are you thinking to yourselves, whoa? Well,
that was certainly one piece that definitely fit in the puzzle, for sure. But, I can't fathom that being in Dylan's shoes and the trauma that occurred that night and that she is dealing with. I mean, we saw that in the sentencing.
Sure.
I cannot.
God, yeah.
She was so courageous and so brave to get up there and say what she needed to say. And my heart goes out to her.
So you guys get to work on December 19th and you're like, we got to move into action. You start the investigation part of it. And then, I mean, some of this stuff, when we hear about it in court and read about it in the court documents about going to do the trash pull, he's being surveilled in Pennsylvania, he's running around with gloves on and all of this stuff. I mean, it literally sounds like something out of a television show. I mean, it's unbelievable. So Talk to me about how all of that unfolded. Did the FBI and Moscow PD, did you guys just reach out to Pennsylvania State Police and just kind of activate, or how does that all unfold?
Yeah, so if memory serves, that was one thing that a lot of people were saying early on, that he was being surveilled from the time he left WSU on his travels back to Pennsylvania, and that the two traffic stops that occurred were somehow orchestrated and a part of that. And that's just not true. When he made that trip back, we did not have his name, and we did not have him pinpointed as our primary suspect. Because, of course, if that would have been the case, we wouldn't have let him leave the area. But once we got his name, we started putting the puzzle together, we realized he was already back in Pennsylvania and immediately called in resources, both FBI and the Pennsylvania State Police, and they jumped into action. They were very happy to help us. They began surveilling him. And you're right, he was seen wearing gloves, doing things like going out to the grocery store with gloves on. He was seen walking around the neighborhood at very, very early morning hours, at the pitch black, and some different behaviors for sure.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it sounds like he's, from everything we read and hear, that he's practically nocturnal. Do you have any insight into what's up with that?
I really don't. Certainly he had a different routine than some or most, but I don't know on that one.
Yeah. So he's running around Pennsylvania, around his parents' house. I mean, he's going out to the grocery wearing gloves. Apparently, allegedly, he's some kind of germaphobe. That's what his defense attorneys had said. Whether or not that's actually true, I don't know. But he's throwing his own trash away and other people's trash cans. You guys go in and you do a trash pull, or with the assistance of the trash company. It seems from everything that came out in court, and you get the match to his dad, I guess. There's the Q-tip, and it shows that whoever the killer was, or whoever's DNA was on the sheath, is the son of the Q-tip DNA. Sure. So you guys swoop in and you get ready to take him in. How worried were you about possibly this leaking out?
Well, as you noticed, everybody following this case, we kept our cards very close to our chest for a very good reason. Because we were not going to put this investigation at risk, because we wanted justice for the victims and for the families, and to hold the person accountable who did this. And that was the mission. So as much as the public wanted information, wanted to know what was going on, what we were doing, we weren't going to share that, because we weren't going to put that at risk. And so, yes, we did a trash pull. We matched the DNA on the Q-tip to his father, which then led to the search warrant and arrest warrant for him in the home. And Pennsylvania State Police did an absolutely phenomenal job in executing that search warrant and arrest warrant, and took him into custody without any issues. And we had both Lieutenant Gilbertson and Corporal Payne had flown out to be a part of that operation and be ready to attempt to interview the suspect when he was in custody.
We've read now about that interview. Sounds like he was very calm, worried about his parents and his dog, wanted to know why he was there, kind of played coy a little bit about the murders. Well, of course he knew about them, thinks it happened, a few weeks back or whatever. What was kind of the feeling about that interaction with law enforcement?
Well, certainly I wasn't there, but in my discussions with Lieutenant Gilbertson and Corporal Payne, they instigated that interview, as we commonly do, is just trying to have a conversation, just trying to get the person talking and see where that kind of leads them. And it sounds like that at several different moments in the conversation, the suspect would stop and say something about, well, let's really talk about why we're here. And I actually, talking to Lieutenant Gilbertson earlier today, he said it was the third time that he brought that up. He was more stern and wanted to know why they were there. And of course, they explained that, well, we're detectives from Idaho, and we had an incident in Moscow, and we that's why we're here. And that's when he invoked his right to counsel and ended the interview.
Interesting. he's arrested. He says he's factually innocent. I mean, his attorneys are saying this in court. I mean, it's their job to defend him, defend his rights, make sure his rights are, his constitutional rights are enforced. What was it like going through all of that? You all feel like you're confident in your case, and yet, there's all of this going on leading up to trial.
It was an immense amount of work, and so much credit to Prosecutor Bill Thompson and his office. They absolutely amaze me, and I've worked with them closely for a lot of years now, especially on this case. From day one, they were on the ground. They were in the scene with investigators from day one throughout this entire case. And I would say that's probably a rarity in the world. So their efforts to assist us not only in the investigation, but of course, learning everything from day one so that they could build the best case possible in this was a momentous amount of work. And it was really amping up here just over the last few weeks, or a couple months rather, because we were ready for trial. We were getting ready for trial. We had, I know that Bill and his cohorts up there were working literally 7 days a week for the last couple of months getting ready for this trial. So it was a lot. It was a lot moving up into this, but they were very prepared to take him to trial and to see this through to the end.
Are you able to give us any insight into, what you found after the investigation? Like, we know that there's been some things out there about he was monitoring the news. You found on his YouTube that he was watching the news about this leading up to his arrest, doing Google searches about all kinds of things, that he had the creepy selfies with the black outfits and stuff like that. I mean, can you give us any insight into what you guys found on his devices?
Well, first and foremost, they had found on his devices that he was routinely wiping them and utilizing systems to do that. And so the amount of information on him was not a lot. I do know that they did locate a few news stories on the case soon after that were on there. I believe there were some searches of that nature. But all in all, most of his devices were relatively clean, for lack of a better term, because he had routinely gotten rid of and wiped those devices.
But was there anything on there? I mean, did you guys find anything on there that was incriminating?
Well, certainly the fact that we were able to match his cell phone to all the data that we had already gathered through so many search warrants. In putting that piece of the puzzle together. Yes, we had the data that this phone had been in the area of the home many, many times, put it that whole timeline that's been put out there. But now we have the actual device. We actually have the phone and could match that up. That was a big piece of it.
Yeah. Do you have any final thoughts, Captain Dahlinger? I mean, things can maybe start to get back to normal in Moscow. I mean, a new normal, I would assume, is what it is, because this has probably forever changed that town.
Yes, it has. It is a part of our history. It'll never go away.
Is there anything else you'd like to say about the investigation or the case?
I just like to reiterate how absolutely blown away and proud I was of all of the law enforcement and investigators that were involved in this case. Their efforts truly got us to where we are today. And again, the mission was to bring some justice for the families and for the victims. And that person who did that horrible, horrible thing is now never going to see the free light of day ever again. And that's what's important. I'm hoping that that'll help start bring some closure to a lot of folks, especially here in the community, so that we can begin to move on and the healing can begin. But that is just my hope. And I understand completely. My heart still goes out to the families. This will never end for them. I hope, I pray for their peace and healing in the years to come. But I'm very happy with the outcome of this and the work that was done.
Thank you, Anthony Dahlinger, Chief of the Moscow Police Department. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
And that's it for this episode of Crime Fix. I'm Angenette Levy. Thanks so much for being with me. I'll see you back here next time.